Hey guys, I hope you've had a decent first week away from school. I've certainly missed being in the classroom and being with you guys every day. So I'm ready to read to you guys again, and I hope to see your guys' faces throughout this week, hopefully on Zoom. But in the meantime, here is chapter 16, The Gravediggers. Remember in chapter 15 it was titled The Man Who Couldn't Sit Down, and that was when Jack had fallen into the coyote hole, and the person who'd gotten him out was the person who had robbed them whenever they were traveling, him and Praiseworthy and the group of guys traveling to the gold mines. They encountered a group of robbers, and this guy was a reformed robber who said he doesn't rob people anymore so he could have Dr. Buckbee's coat back, and they were hoping to find the map in the lining of that, but they didn't find the map. Anyways, go watch that video if you hadn't watched that video yet. This is chapter 16, The Gravediggers. They were 2 days finding their way to Shirt Tail Camp. They followed the South Fork of the American River into the winding Coloma Valley. The summer hills were red and yellow. They passed within 10 feet of old Camp Sutter sawmill. Jack heard everyone in the diggings refer to Sutter as Old Camp, and he knew the miners' yarns about the sawmill. He looked at it now, a rough, timbered shack on stilts at the water's edge. Old Cap had hired a carpenter named Jim Marshall to build it. That was the way the yarn began. On a chill January morning in '48, the carpenter spied a yellow glitter in the tail race. He thought it might be fool's gold, until he beat it with a rock. That was the test. Fool's gold was brittle and would splinter. Real gold was soft and would flatten out. The lump flattened out like a yellow button. Marshall rushed off to Sacramento, where Old Cap had built a fort, and arrived in pouring rain with the news. He made Old Cap bolt to the door, pulled a white cotton rag from a pocket of his wet pantaloons, and revealed his discovery. Jim Marshall was so excited he could barely speak. The two men tried other tests. They got bowls of water and a scale. Using an equal amount of silver, they weighed the two metals underwater. The gold was heavier. Then they tasted the samples with acid to see if it would corrode. They wouldn't. There was no longer any question about Marshall's discovery in the tail race. He had found gold. The news leaked out, and the rush for yellow treasure began. Squatters became swarming into the valley, and now a town had sprung up on both sides of the river. Jack had never seen so many long toms and rockers in his life. "Is this the way to Shirt Tail Camp?" Praiseworthy asked a miner standing knee-deep in water and mud. "Just follow the river. If you hurry, you might get there in time for hanging. A lot of boys is taking the day off for the festivities." Praiseworthy shrugged. "We're in no hurry, my partner and I. It's that dentist fella that caught him trying to run off with the stolen horse." Praiseworthy and Jack exchanged a quick glance. The map. Only Cut-Eye Higgins knew where Dr. Buckbee's gold bonanza might be. He couldn't talk very well hanging from a limb, much as he deserved it, no doubt. "On second thought," said Praiseworthy, "we're in a terrible hurry. Good day, sir." They arrived at Shirt Tail Camp in an hour. It was a dusty village of round tents and square tents, and plank shacks roofed with pine boughs. "There," said Jack, "there he is." He saw Cut-Eye Higgins seated on a horse under the limb of a tree. He wore his hippa-hoppa hat, and around his neck a noose. The scar across his eye set a face at hard squint. A crowd was ringed around him. "We're just in time," Jack murmured. Praiseworthy whipped out Stubbs' red bandana, blindfolded, and quickly tied it around Jack's face. "Partner, we've got a toothache." "What?" "Moan now, and then. Good and loud. Come on." Jack gulped and followed Praiseworthy through the crowd. A paunchy man with a curly fringe of whiskers from ear to ear seemed to be in charge of the festivities. "Doc," he was saying, "you know the verdict of the jury? As justice of the peace of Shirttail Camp, I'll see you get a good burying, as fits a professional man such as yourself. We don't mind so much that you extracted the gold pouch every time we opened cur mouths. There's plenty other around, and that you light-fingered every pocket watch in town, so that nobody knows what time it is. You're a professional man, and we try to make allowances. But horse stealing is a heinous crime, and you gotta pay the penalty. Since you said your last words 2-3 times already this afternoon, let's get on with it. Boys, switch that horse. Now, before I keep reading, you guys know that Praiseworthy's a very tricky guy, and he comes up with the plan all the time. So let's see what he has in store for us. Hold on, demanded Praiseworthy, stepping forward. I've got a lad here with a powerful toothache. The Justice of the Peace threw down his hat. Doggone! That's the third one today. We'll never get him strung up. I beg of you, gents, said Praiseworthy. We have come a long way, and it'll only take a moment. The boy's in pain. Listen to him moan. Jack bellowed and held a hand to his cheek. He wasn't pretending. He was downright scared they might let Cut-Eye Higgins pull one of his teeth. All right, said the chin-whiskered official. Get the dog down off that horse. Hiram, give him a bag of forceps and bring the molasses barrel for the boy to sit on. Jack moaned again and watched the men help Cut-Eye Higgins off the saddle. He seemed a little weak in the knees. They cut the rope binding his wrist behind his back, but left the noose around his neck. He peered from Jack to Praiseworthy. It was a moment before he recognized the butler in red shirt, jack boots, and whiskers. Never thought I'd be glad to see you again, he said. His face was pale, and his usual sneer was gone. Reluctantly, Jack seated himself on the molasses barrel, and the doomed man clapped an eye on him. Open your mouth, son, so stop squirming. Jack took one look at the steel forceps and Cut-Eye Higgins' shaky hand and decided that a team of mules wasn't going to get his mouth open. Jack took, let's see them ivories, Cut-Eye Higgins said under his breath. I'll just tinker. You didn't come to me and have anything yanked. We came for the map, Praiseworthy muttered. I figured. Get me out of this and the map is yours. Praiseworthy nodded. It's a bargain. I'll do the best I can. But first, the map. I don't trust you, even with a noose around your neck. Cut-Eye Higgins lifted off his hippa-hoppa hat and fished a thick, folded strip of brown paper out of the sweatband. It was as if he kept it there only to make his hat fit. When he returned the hat to his head and slipped down almost to his ears, there's my part of the bargain. Now, you keep yours. Open them jaws, boy! Jack swallowed hard and opened up. The crowd watched and waited. Cut-Eye Higgins wiped the forceps on his sleeve and set to work. Praiseworthy opened up the folds of the brown paper, studied the markings, and within a few seconds, he saw that the foxy scoundrel had outfoxed him again. The map traced a line along the North Fork of the American River, through the Coloma Valley, and in with an X mark that could only be Shirttail Camp. Why, this map is no good, snapped Praiseworthy. I didn't say it was, except to make my hat fit. But that's the map Dr. Buckbee's brother made before he died. The same, the genuine article. Only in the meantime them pockets of gold got discovered all over again. By the time I got here, we were 100 miners in the spot. Jack moaned his best he could with the forceps trying to spread his teeth apart. Their 50-50 share of Dr. Buckbee's mine was worthless. Cut-Eye Higgins had led them on a wild goose chase. Get me out of the noose, Cut-Eye Higgins had led them, said Cut-Eye Higgins. That was our bargain, wasn't it? Praiseworthy ripped the map to bits. He'd given his word, and he had to stand. Gentlemen, he said, turning to the justice of the peace and others around him, I take it you have acted as judge and jury in this case. That's right, answered the official. He got a fair trial, and anyway, he was caught red-handed. Was he represented? What for? He knew he was guilty. Under what law do you intend to dispatch Dr. Higgins from the limb of that tree? Why, everybody knows a horse stealing is again the law. What law? Now listen here, stranger. There ain't a law book within 50 miles that I know of. I hear they had one over in Growlersburg, but it was printed on thin paper, and the boys took to rolling cigarettes with it. Speaking for myself, I don't see any reason to let law interfere with justice around here. We never did before. Praiseworthy began slowly pacing back and forth. In the absence of a law book, gentlemen, I recommend to your notice that humanity is also lacking in this case. You're about to string up the only dentist in these diggings. Is that human? He may deserve his fate, but with what innocent whose only crime is it to come down with a toothache? Praiseworthy turned and made a grand courtroom gesture toward Jack. Like my young partner here, think of the pain and suffering you will inflict on those in dire need of a tooth extractor. Tomorrow it may be you, sir, with your cheeks swelled up like a melon. Or you, sir, Mr. Justice of Peace, with a pain in your jaw as if you had a beef or a molar stinging away from morning till night. One by one he singled out the gentlemen of the jury, and one by one they found themselves rubbing their jaws as if they could almost feel a toothache coming on. Praiseworthy had never made a speech in his life, but the words rolled off his tongue, and he could feel their effect on the crowd. When he finished, he was greeted with a yell of approval. He is talking sense, someone called out. That dog can't pull teeth if he's 6 feet under. We could put him in jail. The justice of Shirttail Camp shook his head. Boys, we ain't got a jail, you know that. The verdict was string 'em up. But I suppose I could delay sentence until another tooth extractor shows up in these parts. There's bound to be one before long. Then we'll get on with the sentence. There was a general approval from the crowd, and two toothaches broke out on the spot. Praiseworthy was astonished by the power he had found in his voice. The two miners got in line at the molasses barrel, and Jack was glad to give up his place. My tooth has stopped hurting, he said, and Cut-Eye Higgins gave him a wink with his bad eye. Doc Higgins, said the Justice of Peace, you got yourself a temporary reprieve. When you finish with them extracting jobs, you stand still, and we're going to build a jailhouse around you. There'll be visiting hours for anyone with a toothache, but I'll see you hung yet, and soon as possible. Then he turned to Praiseworthy. Stranger, I promised the doc a good burying befitting a professional man. Might as well get all in readiness. Since you appointed yourself counsel for the defense, you get to go up the hills and dig 'em a resting place. Make it 6 feet deep. Why 6 feet? Don't be cantankerous, or I'll fine you for being in a contempt of court. Everybody knows a grave has got to be 6 feet deep. Get going. The two partners returned to their burrow and led him above the hills on the diggings. You sure made a good speech, Jack said. It was something to hear. A regular lawyer couldn't have done better. And you saved Cut-Eye Higgins from being strung up. It's just temporary, which is about all he deserves. They chose a bare spot about a half a mile from camp. It was on a bluff covered in oat straw, overlooking the river. They pulled pick and shovel from Stubbs' pack ropes and set to work. Fine-looking country, isn't it? Praiseworthy muttered. Even to be buried in. Jack tried not to think about Boston. It would soon be time to start back, and all they had to show for their labors was a worthless map. Poor Aunt Arabella, he thought. They would lose their house for sure. The entire trip to California was beginning to look like a wild goose chase. When they got the hole 4 feet deep, they couldn't go any further. They hit bedrock and struck gold. That's the end of chapter 16. We'll get to chapter 17 next, which is the 15th of August. Have a good day.